to everybody out there in TV land. This is Mike Hittner with Historic Point Basse Update. Today we got special guest Jim Nickel to my right, Tom Brehmer to his right, and we'd like to welcome them as special guests today, especially Jim, his first time being on the program. We're going to talk a little bit about Wakely's Sugar Bush, which is our next event coming up. But we got a little review to do, and we want to go through Winter Feast, which we had February 14th, Valentine's Day at the Casey Hall. Very cold day, but a nice crowd for the weather and everything. Tom, you report you were mostly in the kitchen all the time, but
everything went really well. We had our meeting last night, and this the first thing we talked about at the meeting was how well all the volunteers and everything worked together. And I think it was the easiest one as far as not being frustrating, you know.
Yeah. I think that we coordinated a little better, the takedown and the plate situation, where before we had such a rush and such a crowd in the kitchen, we couldn't handle it really.
A couple of the volunteers the year before made some suggestions, and it worked out really well. I was very, very happy, and we turned a reasonable profit. I mean, that's a fundraiser. There's no hiding it. Right. And it was a good time was had by all. We even did a little bit of Virginia Reel. We had a good time. We got compliments from the band, folks that came from the New London area, and they were very, very happy to be invited. And sounds like they would do it again in a heartbeat. So
probably
I'm really glad.
Yeah, this is my first time that was there, and the food was fabulous. The wild game meat, if you didn't know that it was really labeled what it was, you would never known that the rabbit a la king was rabbit. It's more like a chicken. Okay. And the dancing was great. It gave us a chance to learn a couple new dances.
That was kind of nice for you and Diane to be there. Yep. And so, and helping out, but also from more of the audience participation. And sometimes Tom and I don't really get that because I'm running around and making sure everything is the way it should be. And of course, Tom is doing the same thing in the kitchen. Of course, on that day I wasn't feeling too good, so I left about 7. I probably shouldn't have even been there, but we find that out later, usually in retrospect. But that was our last event, Winter Feast, February 14th. The next event will be the 14th and 15th of March, and that'll be the home show. That's in Wisconsin Rapids at Lincoln High School. We'll have a presence there. We invite you to our booth. I don't know exactly, Tom, have you decided what you're going to do for a setup on the booth?
We're going to do some work with the Schnitzelbank. Jim is going to be working with them. We're going to make some slats for the back of a wooden chair. Oh. And and the public can come and participate. We just talked about it.
We want them to help make some shavings.
Right. Yep. And then Diane's going to bring her loom, and they're going to do a demonstration of some of the fiber art stuff. We may get a spin or two. Haven't heard back yet, but the idea is to have a couple of different things there to look at, and then information about us and about our volunteer programs and
schedule for the year.
Schedules and our workshops and all that stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like a good time. And it's kind of nice to add those fiber arts to it, because we've always kind of done the sawing or the drilling or something like that, and it's more, I guess, male-oriented or interested more for males, though anybody can be interested in it. But this will draw some of the ladies, maybe they have an interest in fiber arts, or at least are interested or inquiring about it. And so that'll be kind of fun to see that. Yep. So thanks, Jim and Diane, for filling in there. Tom and I and Don and Marianne are going to be in a MOMSI conference at the same time, overlapping. Unfortunately, it almost always happens that way. We'll be down in Collinsville, Illinois. But
we're on to work on Sunday, though. I wrote us down.
Okay. So the home show, that's the 14th and 15th, Wisconsin Rapids, Lincoln High School. And the hours are like 10 to 4, 10 to 5. 10
to 5 Saturday, 10 to 4 on Sunday.
And a good time. Come on down and visit and talk. And if anybody's got anything to donate or has got some ideas, especially blacksmith stuff, we're kind of looking for blacksmith equipment. Come on down, let us know, give us a name, and we'll come out and visit and see if it can work for us. So thanks for that. And next event, of course, Jim is our is our Sugar Bush. That's on March 28th, and that's from 10 to 4 at the Wakely site. East of Nakusa, south on County Trungzee, just watch for the signs. We'll have lots of signs out. But Jim, before we get into that, you're a newer volunteer with your wife, Diane. Can you tell us how you got involved or what brought it about?
We got involved with the cooking class that was held last fall. Saw the sign up, and so we thought this would be a really neat thing to do. I mean, because we had done camping when we had the kids, and figured, well, we'll learn something out there. And it was a great 4 weeks. Learned a lot in the first 3 weeks. The last week is where the students put to use the things that they had learned during the 3 weeks. And so we got to make the meal then for the teachers.
Right.
And for that, since then, and then we just kind of jumped right in and kind of enjoyed it.
Tom has worked this out, and of course it's based on something we got out of a group out of Ohio, that there's a volunteer component to it. And of course, Jim and Diane have volunteered much beyond the hours that are, I think, what is it, 8 or 10 hours, Tom?
15.
15 hours that's suggested. And of course, Jim and Diane are very involved in the website and making sure that's cleaned up and fresh, and so they've done great work on that. And so that's thankful, because Tom and I aren't that gifted or inclinated towards it, and Jim and Diane do a really good job on that. So, but that's how Jim got involved in talking to you folks out there. If you want to get involved, I mean, we work on Mondays, usually from about 9 to 1 or so, and we got projects this summer. We hope to build the bunkhouse, the last big building on the site, and we want to do that all with hand tools. In the past, we've used some, saws and that sort of thing, and so this is going to be something new. And so we're going to have, I think, we'll probably do a couple weekends and try to put it up and get as much public involvement, which would be good for all of us to have everybody involved in it. So now we're going to talk about Sugar Bush. Now, we brought Jim on because Jim actually, Tom and I don't, but Jim actually taps maple trees for maple sap to make maple syrup. But Jim, why don't you tell me a little background of what you do, how many trees you do, and that sort of thing?
This year we're going to probably put out about 100 taps. And it takes 40 gallons, roughly, to make 1 gallon of syrup. And it depends on the sugar content. And so we'll go out, the days need to be above freezing, usually like about a 40, and at night it has to cool. And it has to get down below freezing so that the sap can move up and down.
Otherwise, if it stays the same temperature, nothing moves.
And it doesn't move very well. And so then you end up going out, we go out, and we'll take a bit brace and go out, and we'll drill a hole into our trees. And we mark it out. It goes in about 2.5 inches.
About a quarter inch?
No, it's about 5/16.
5/16.
5/16. Mm-hmm. And you want to end up drilling our hole into the tree, and then we'll take now we'll use a metal one, and it'll get put into there. It'll get tapped in with the hammer, and then you'll hang your bucket here. You get about a gallon a day on a really good good day.
Now, can you put more than one tap in a tree, depending on the size of the trees, Jim?
You can. You need a 12-inch tree to tap.
Minimum.
That's a minimum. And after that, the most you can put in a tree is 3 to 4 taps. Even if the tree is huge, 4 feet in diameter.
Right. You aren't going to get any more out of it if you put more taps in it.
It's harder on the tree. So you try and stick with 3 to 4.
Now, when you take the taps out, do you put anything in or just let it heal?
The taps are pulled, and the tree will heal on its own. When you go out there next year, you'll see there'll be a little round hole that looks like there's a plug been put into it.
Right. That's nature's way of taking care of it.
And it heals up in a year. And when you cut the lumber, and you'll see little plugs like that in some of the maple lumber, and that's what it is.
Now, do you tap all on your own land, or do you borrow some neighbors?
No, we tap all on our own land.
Oh, wonderful.
So
wonderful. And how many years have you been doing it, Jim?
We've been doing it probably about 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
And it's time consuming. You know, when folks, if you're used to Mrs. Buttersworth or whatever out there, if you get real maple syrup, there's nothing like it. And when you see it and it's $15 or $20 a quart, it's because a lot of labor goes into that.
There's a lot of time.
A lot of time consuming. And when you figure out, I'm sure Jim and Diane can figure out, for the time they put in it, So what if they had to sell it? They'd be making $1 an hour is probably what it amounts to.
Yeah, because you end up, you boil down all day long and all night long, and you know, we just quit at the end of the day. But it takes a long time to boil down. So you have to go out every day and you have to collect and you have to store it. Then you finally start the process of boiling down. And people are really surprised to see, because they always come out and look, and they always want to know, what do you add in to give it the brown color? And you tell them nothing. It's just that it starts out looking like water,
right? And
as it boils down, it gets darker and darker and darker, and then you just end up with syrup.
Yeah, how much do you make in a given year? I know it depends on the year.
It depends on the year. We usually, because we haven't tapped as many trees in the past, we usually go with about 2 to 3 gallons.
And that lasts all year.
And that lasts us all year. Plus, we give some away and everything, you know.
Sure.
And
you fire with wood on your evaporator?
We fire with wood. We use a combination of oak and pine.
Something that's quick and hot, and something that lasts.
Right,
a
it kind of mingles together and cooks on down.
Okay. And do you usually set everything aside every year? You got your little pile for the cook down kind of set aside in advance?
We'll go out and cut now for next year.
So you cut a year ahead usually?
Yeah, cut a year ahead, so it's just nice and dry, good and hard. And we usually bring the grandkids out.
They love it, I bet. Huh?
Yeah, they get to split the wood.
Yeah.
You know.
And they like tasting the syrup, or when it's just about syrup. I remember when I was a kid, they went out and put some on some snow, and they almost made like a snow cone out of it.
Yeah, we made a little snow cone out of it. And this year we may even try to make maple sugar.
Yeah, and then you just, cook it completely down?
For making that into syrup, usually you can go about 7 degrees above boiling. Whatever boiling is going to be, not necessarily 212. It depends on the weather. You go 7 degrees above boiling to get syrup, and if you pick it up and when you pour it off the spoon, you'll see it'll start to string out, and then you know it's syrup. To get it into sugar, you need to go another 40 degrees above boiling.
Now, do you have to worry about burning it? Is there that possibility, or?
No, only if you don't have much left in your pan.
Okay, so otherwise you shouldn't burn it.
Right. Usually it's kind of nice to put it on a side burner where you can adjust the heat a little bit better. And you get it to about 250 degrees, and at that point you can take it off, and then you have to stir it. And to get it cooled down really quick, and you'll see that it'll start to turn a light brown, and it'll get really frothy. It's kind of like making fudge.
Oh, really?
You know, when you made fudge, you start out and you beat it, it gets rid of that glossy look.
Right.
You know, same thing. It gets frothy, and then you just pour it into a mold, or you can just pour it out and let it harden up.
I always tell everybody, Jim and Tom, that if you got a sweet tooth, try some maple sugar, and that'll take care of you for a week, because it's so intensely sweet that you don't really want anything else after that for a while. Right,
it is very intense, and that's why they used, back in the time period that we portray, that's what they used was the maple sugar.
It's the only way they could keep it.
It was the only way they could keep it, and plus it was a way of getting away with their dependence upon cane sugar from outside.
Right.
So,
which was probably variable times of the year they could get it, and available, not available. Tom, maybe in the cabin, the trader's cabin, you may have some maple sugar for people to try?
We will have. We're going to do, if plans work out, and I think they will, to do a apple fritter.
Wow.
Got a recipe from a historic YouTube site that we go to a lot with our cooking. And they do a apple fritter. They use hard apple cider as the liquid.
Okay.
And it's flour and this hard apple cider, chopped apples, and some currants. And then you make a small spoon drop, kind of a dumpling sort of thing.
Drop in oil?
Into oil, and then you'll come up with this donut hole. And that'll be rolled in maple sugar. We may put a little bit in the batter to start with too, and then we'll have those for people to sample. And we're going to have a little apple cider, and I know that in the house they'll be serving pancakes and maple syrup. Now, silver dollar, and not a whole plateful.
Not coming
this
from
is a sample, not supper.
Right.
Well, I don't want anybody to come in and say, well, you know, I paid my $3 to get in. Where's my plate full of pancakes?
Right.
You ain't getting one.
Right. So that's a good opportunity for anybody that hasn't tasted maple sugar to try it in a nice way with the apple fritter, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, they're kind of fun.
Let's go over a little bit here, and Jim can come from that end. We've got some old styles or old what do they call those, Jim?
Those are the styles.
Styles
for the tap.
This is one that's hand carved out, and it's got a little groove. And some people don't either. These are antique ones here, hand carved, and then a little thing here, a groove's cut in for hanging the pail on it. So it kind of give you an idea. This one is maybe willow.
This is a willow one, yeah. And what they had done is you'd take a willow, a chunk of willow, cut it up in the length that you wanted, and then you would heat up an iron rod in a fire, and then you would run it down through the center to burn out the pith.
Yeah, I think you could almost do that with sumac or something.
Those are sumac.
And we made those, I think Tom or somebody made those, and those are made out of sumac, which has a kind of a soft center too that you could push through. These might have been drilled, but you could have pushed it through with some heat or something like that. And then here's another older one that's hand carved, and you got to see that the people are very ingenious. Very light wood. I don't know exactly what it is. It's either pine or balsa wood or something because it's so light. Jim, did you feel that hefty? That's very not much there.
It's probably could be basswood.
Basswood.
There's a lot of basswood in this area.
Yeah.
And that's nice and light.
Basswood's very easy to carve. It's nice to carve and it's light.
Right.
So it makes a nice thing that you can do. And somebody, you know, this time of year while they're getting ready for the harvest of the maple sap, this is the sort of thing you can sit around and probably knock off in the evening, you know, for an hour or so, knock off a couple, 2, 3 of those and do that a number of days, and then all of a sudden you got a bunch of them.
When the Indians did it at first, they would carve slashes in the side of the maple tree.
Like the rubber tree thing we saw
That
as
sort
kids.
of thing, yeah.
Right.
And then they would put in a willow catch trough. Because they didn't hang a pail, they would put their birch bark container, McCook, I believe they're called, at the foot of the tree, so they'd want to stick that out a ways. We saw it in Midland, Michigan when we were there at the Ojibwa Center there. They would do a longer collector, and it would drip into this V-shaped thing that they had driven up in the tree, and then that would funnel the sap out into a birch bark container on the ground, just let it drip. And the thing they did was that they would cook it during the day, and because they're using birch bark vessels, now we're talking before
you had pails or anything.
Before Europeans got here at all
before
with metal containers.
Copper or bronze pails.
They would cook it using some heat from underneath, and then putting hot stones in it to boil the sap. And that works. We've done it in our class.
At your cooking class, you can boil water pretty quick.
But they also then in the evening would take it off and let it freeze. And because you've concentrated some of the sugars, the water would come to the top.
Skim that off.
And then they would skim off that scum ice in the spring and put it back on the fire. So they're actually concentrating it even during the night, because that freezing takes that water off the top and leaves the sugar to simmer.
Yeah, and who says they weren't ingenious?
Oh.
Right, I mean, you know,
when you think about it. Yeah, just a couple other styles here. This is an old, I believe probably lead from the weight of it. This is when we started getting into the metal ones, and this was put into the tree, and then you had a couple things here where you could hang, put your hook on there. And then this is a more modern one. This is maybe a kind that you see in this day and age, and Jim or somebody might use that. These are just a kind of a rolled tin, and they're put into the tree, and then the hook is put on like that, and you hang your pail underneath.
Hang your pail under and let it drip in.
It's very common. Of course, the bigger people that do it today do a lot of it. They're probably hooked up with hoses and stuff, and they use reverse osmosis to thin it out and that sort of thing. So we'd like you to come to our Wakely Sugar Bush, see how it was done 150 years ago, and that's on March 28th from 10 to 4, $3 for adults, $2 for children, east of Nakusa, just off County Trunk Z. Welcome, folks. I want to welcome Diane Nickel. and her husband Jim, of course, we introduced before, but Diane came on in a little break we had here, and she's prepared, like you're going to get down at the Wakely site, Silver Dollar buckwheat pancakes and with real maple syrup. So this can kind of give you an idea of what it's like. So Diane made this up probably, what, this morning, last night?
A little bit last night, yes. And I'll present that here.
All right, they look really good.
Yeah,
and
that's the size we'll make, because then everybody can get a taste of them. We're, like Tom had said before, not serving a meal, but we want to give you a taste of it. A lot of people, surprisingly, when you talk to them, haven't really tried maple syrup. It's unbelievable, especially I'd say the people 30 or 35 and under. I mean, they just didn't grow up with it. It was expensive or whatever, had no contact. But I think now more with local foods, we're seeing more people, picking up on the maple syrup end of it.
Right, and the true maple syrup is not thick like you see with the table syrup that you normally have on a pancake. It comes out really slow. Maple syrup is a little runnier.
Yeah, and that's why even when some restaurants used to use it, it was hard to regulate because they pour too much out on the plate because they're used to the thick stuff, and of course they waste it, and then the price of that stuff, you really can't waste it if you can help it. And so that's why you seldom see it, and that's probably why even Mrs. Butterworth or all these ones are so heavy of syrup, because people tend not to waste it. And if it's got about 2% maple in it, you might be lucky. But most time it's just probably sugar and water.
Right, it does have a little different taste.
So folks, come on out March 28th, Sugar Bush, and the house will be doing these right on the stove, the 1850s stove, Silver Dollar buckwheat pancakes with pure maple syrup. So we invite you out. All the buildings, the school, the house, the 3-bay shed. Jim will be in there making some slats, like he said, for the back of chairs, and Don, and the blacksmith shop, and of course the trader's cabin. So come on out March 28th, 10 to 4, the Wakely site.
We invite you to come out, and you can actually watch us. There's several women folk that come out, and we dress in period clothing. And we actually will be cooking them right in front of you, and we'll be mixing the batter right into the authentic bowls that they would have back in the time period that we're representing. And then we'll actually cook them on the stove, the wood-burning stove. And so you can come out and see a real wood-burning stove in action, and you can ask a lot of questions on how the women folk would keep that going and how the men folk would keep our wood going for us. And so there's lots of real interesting things that will be happening that particular day for you to see.
Thanks again, Diane and Jim.
All right.
Thank you.